The storm rolled in just past midnight. Rain tapped gently on the window panes, wind coiling through the trees like breath held too long. Inside the Carter home, the world slept, quiet, still, until Emily woke screaming. Sarah was there in an instant, clutching her daughter's trembling body as she bolted upright in bed. Emily's voice, silent for weeks, finally broke through the dark. "He's still watching me," she whispered. It wasn't just the words, it was the certainty in them. A tone so rooted in fear that Sarah felt her skin crawl. She looked down at Emily, her hands shaking as she brushed damp hair from her daughter's face. "Sweetheart, who's watching you?" Emily didn't answer, but her fingers reached for the familiar weight of Rex's fur. The German shepherd had already leapt onto the bed, positioning himself between Emily and the window, as if shielding her from the night itself. He let out a low whine, not of distress, but recognition. An hour later, Sarah sat across from Agent Jack Monroe in the conference room at the Seattle field office. Her voice trembled, her eyes heavy with fear and exhaustion. Emily sat beside her, unusually calm now, clutching Rex's leash in one hand and a red crayon in the other. Monroe watched the little girl carefully. The nightmares weren't new, but this time she had spoken, and more importantly, she had drawn. Emily slid the picture across the table. It was crude, lines and shadows hastily scribbled, but unmistakable. A tall figure in a long coat, and a face hidden behind a mask. Not the kind from Halloween, something darker, smooth, blank, wrong. Monroe leaned in. "You've seen him before?" Emily gave the smallest of nods. Lisa Carter, tech specialist, entered with a tablet in hand. "Jack," she said, tone clipped, "you need to see this." They moved into the adjacent operations room. Lisa pulled up a waveform audio file, one of the encrypted folders they had recovered from the hidden hard drive in Hale's warehouse. Until now, the audio had remained unreadable. But Lisa had broken through the codec minutes before Emily's nightmare. The voice that played wasn't Hale's, it wasn't Klein's. It was colder, distorted but calm. Burn the shipment, all of it, leave nothing. The girl wasn't supposed to survive. Hall failed. Klein compromised, reset the cycle. The silence afterward felt physical. Lisa looked up. This isn't just trafficking, it's coordinated. Military precision, logistics, code language. They don't see these kids as victims, Jack. They see them as assets. Jack leaned against the table, eyes still fixed on the waveform as if it might offer more. The masked man, he's giving the orders. Hale and Klein were just tools. Sarah's voice was barely audible behind them. "You think he's still out there?" Jack looked at Emily, who stared out the window now, her expression unreadable, Rex's head resting in her lap. "He never left," Jack said. "He's just waiting for us to catch up." He stepped out into the hall to take a call from Quantico. Updates on the facial reconstruction of the masked figure. The sketch, built from Emily's description and the new voice data, had triggered an old flag in the database, an alias, a ghost. No known real name, but a record of movement, 6 different countries, 3 unsolved child disappearances, codename Ward. Jack's jaw clenched. We've got a name, now we need his network. He returned to the room, met Lisa's gaze. Anything else on the audio? She nodded. Yes, one line repeated, almost a mantra. I ran it through the decryption twice to be sure. She typed in the phrase, "The chain must not break." Jack stared at the words. A chill ran down his spine. Then it's time we broke it ourselves. Rex barked once, sharp, decisive. And just like that, the hunt began again. The rain had just started when they reached the outskirts of Tacoma, a bleak sprawl of rusted fences and half-collapsed warehouses that hadn't seen legal activity in years. Jack Monroe stepped out of the black SUV, boots crunching against gravel soaked by the drizzle. Beside him, Rex leapt down with the practiced grace of an old soldier. The dog's ears were perked, his eyes sharp, nose twitching against the wind, as if he already sensed something was off. Lisa Carter stood at the rear of the SUV, tapping into a tablet. Her fingers moved fast, scanning blueprints of the building ahead. "This is it," she said, barely above a whisper. "The lease is held by a shell company linked to the same offshore account that paid Hale. We're not just chasing ghosts anymore, Jack." Monroe gave a curt nod, motioning the federal task force behind them to fan out. The old steel doors groaned in protest as they were forced open, the sound echoing through the cavernous dark. A thick wave of damp air spilled out, laced with mildew and oil, and something else. A chemical bitterness that clung to the walls like memory. They entered slowly, weapons drawn, footsteps silent. It didn't feel abandoned. Rex froze. His head snapped toward a corridor to the left, body stiffening. Then came the low growl, deep, controlled, primal. Jack's voice was barely audible. "He smells something." They followed Rex down the hallway, its concrete walls stained with the water damage and graffiti long faded. The corridor ended at a reinforced steel door with a biometric scanner. "Lisa," Jack murmured. She was already there, kneeling at the panel. "Military-grade encryption, but I've seen this variation before. Give me a minute." While she worked, Jack's eyes roamed the hall. The walls felt too thick, too deliberate. Not just storage, something was being hidden. With a soft beep, the door clicked open. Inside was another world. The room glowed in dim blue light, rows of servers humming against one wall. Dozens of steel filing cabinets lined the opposite side, each labeled with a date and set of initials. But the centerpiece was the table in the center, covered in neatly organized folders. Jack reached out, flipping one open. Children. Photographs paper-clipped to intake forms. Birth dates. Medical histories. Family data. "Jesus," Jack breathed. "This isn't just trafficking, it's cataloging, profiling." They were building dossiers. Lisa stepped beside him, scanning pages. Each file has tracking codes, shipment logs. Some are crossed out, some marked with R, and a date. He turned another folder. The name made his pulse hitch. Emily Carter, and beneath hers, Emma Sullivan, Noah Mitchell. Lisa's voice trembled. They weren't random, they were chosen. At that moment, Rex let out a short bark, not alarmed, focused. Jack turned to see the dog nosing at the far corner of the room, an unassuming wall of rusted filing cabinets. Rex pawed once, then twice, his nails scraping metal. Monroe approached, pulled one cabinet forward, and found a hidden door behind it. It opened with a click. The air inside was colder, tighter. A small, insulated room. 3 monitors blinked faintly, all showing grainy black and white feeds from different angles. A forest trail, a coastal dock, and the dim hallway of another basement. Cameras were still active, broadcasting live. Lisa's eyes widened. They're still operational, remote surveillance. These feeds are being streamed. To where? She stared at the code flickering at the bottom of the screens. Encrypted, but I can trace it. It'll take some time. Jack stepped back, staring at the blinking footage. Somewhere out there, someone was still watching, still running this. And Rex was staring at the third monitor, the one showing the hallway. His body had gone tense again, his tail low, growl vibrating in his chest. Jack looked closer. The hallway in the feed had a mark, barely visible. a crescent moon carved into the wall's plaster. Jack felt a cold weight settle in his gut. "I've seen that before," he muttered. "Where?" Lisa asked. "Old intel. During the Serpent's takedown 10 years ago. That symbol marked safe houses, places they used for temporary storage. People, not products. The gravity of it settled on them. This wasn't over." Jack turned to Lisa, voice clipped. "Can you trace the feed now?" She nodded. "If I can get back to HQ, yes, but it's bouncing through 4 international relays. It's deliberate." Monroe looked back at the files. Hundreds of them. Children cataloged like inventory. Most marked, some missing, some with an X. "Do we have any live names?" he asked. Lisa scanned the most recent log. 7 kids, 5 are still unaccounted for. He didn't speak for a moment. Then, "We're not letting another one vanish." Behind them, Rex gave a short bark again. This time, not a warning. A push forward, toward action. Monroe took one last look at the blinking monitors. Somewhere beyond the static, behind encrypted lines and steel doors, children were still waiting. And the man behind the mask, whoever he was still watching. The sea was restless that morning. Gray clouds curled low over the horizon, cloaking the ocean in a somber haze. Waves slapped against the hull of the FBI tactical boat as it sped toward the remote coordinates, a forgotten speck of land floating off the Washington coast. Jack Monroe stood at the bow, rain spattering his jacket, his jaw tight beneath the brim of his cap. His fingers curled around the cold metal railing, eyes locked on the approaching island like a man watching the edge of a storm. Beside him, Rex crouched low, his fur soaked but his gaze sharp, alert, as though sensing the danger ahead before anyone else did. The island was no more than 2 square miles, thick with pine trees and bramble, its shoreline jagged like broken teeth. Hidden in its center sat the estate of Franklin Ward, a name that, until 72 hours ago, had meant nothing more than charitable dinners and smiling photographs in Forbes. But behind the facade, Monroe now knew, was the monster they'd been chasing. The masked man. The orchestrator of Hale, of Klein, of everything. Monroe's voice was low into the radio. "Team A, circle around the eastern perimeter. Team B, hold until I give the word. He won't run unless he sees us." Rex let out a soft growl, his body pressing against Monroe's leg. He knows. The infiltration was swift, almost surgical. The team moved through the estate's outer wall in silence, their boots muffled against the wet undergrowth. The house was larger than Monroe had imagined. Not a home, but a compound. Reinforced glass. Steel-reinforced doors. Surveillance towers hidden in the tree line. Ward had prepared for something. Maybe not them, but something. Inside, the estate was cold and pristine, the smell of chlorine and cedar. It didn't feel like a place children had lived, and yet, "Third floor's clear," Agent Lisa Carter whispered through comms. Monroe moved quickly, sweeping the second floor. It was Rex who halted first, ears snapping forward, tail rigid. He padded toward a closed door, nose twitching violently. Monroe followed, hand on his sidearm, heart thudding. He kicked the door open. The room beyond was narrow and windowless. Stark. No color, no life. Just 3 cots bolted to the floor. On the far side, huddled under a threadbare blanket, sat Noah Mitchell. The boy was pale, his cheeks hollow, but his eyes, the moment they met Monroe's, were wide with something fierce. Hope. "Noah," Monroe breathed, lowering his weapon. Rex moved first, slowly, like he knew sudden movements might shatter the boy. He crossed the room and laid his head gently in Noah's lap. The boy didn't flinch. He touched the dog's ears with shaking fingers and cried. 2 other children were found in the adjoining room. Girls, no older than 9. One had scabbed wrists, the other clutched a dirty stuffed bear with such force her knuckles had gone white. They didn't speak, but when Rex sat beside them, they leaned into his warmth without hesitation. "They're alive," Monroe said into the comms, his voice tight with emotion. "Repeat, they're alive." Then everything changed. A tremor rattled through the floor, the hum of machinery beneath their feet. "He's triggering the underground system," Lisa said from the surveillance room. "There's a tunnel. Thermal scan shows movement. Someone's heading for the tree line." "Ward." Monroe was already moving. "Team A. Cut him off at the West Ridge. I'm going after him." The rain was heavier now, the forest slick with mud and tangled roots. Rex was ahead of him, a dark blur weaving through trees, driven by something raw, instinct, memory, justice. Monroe followed, lungs burning, vision narrowing. They found him at the edge of a ravine, Franklin Ward, dressed in black, his face bare and slick with sweat. He was older than Monroe expected, but the look in his eyes was ageless, cold, calculating, inhuman. "You're too late," he said, even as he panted. Monroe didn't raise his weapon. He stepped closer. "You had them locked in cages like animals." Ward tilted his head. "And yet, you keep one on a leash," Rex growled, a low, guttural sound that made Ward's smile falter. "They were just numbers to you," Monroe said. "Files on a hard drive. Do you even remember their names?" "Names are temporary," Ward whispered. "Cycles are eternal." He lunged, but not at Monroe. He turned toward the ravine. Rex moved first. In a blur of fur and fury, the German shepherd launched forward, teeth clamping onto Ward's arm midair. They fell together, crashing into the mud. Monroe sprinted, grabbing Rex's harness just as the man thrashed beneath them. The agents arrived seconds later, pulling Ward to his feet, cuffing him as he struggled and spat. "There will always be another me," he hissed, blood dripping from his lips. "You can't stop the cycle." And maybe that was true. But for now, the cycle had cracked, and the children were alive. They brought Franklin Ward into custody before the sun had fully risen. The sky over the harbor was still bruised with storm clouds, and the air carried the bitter scent of salt and diesel. He sat in the interrogation room like he owned it. Back straight, hands resting neatly on the table, not a bead of sweat on his brow. To the cameras, to the world, Ward was the man who had built schools in Haiti, funded children's hospitals, and given impassioned TED Talks about philanthropy and progress. But behind the veneer of compassion was the architect of something far more monstrous. A trafficking empire spun through non-profits and shell corporations, hidden in the folds of good intentions. Jack Monroe stood behind the two-way mirror, jaw clenched. Lisa Carter stood beside him, tablet in hand. "Voice analysis confirms it. It's him." Monroe didn't nod. He just watched. Rex sat at his feet, but his body was taut, eyes locked onto the glass. His ears twitched with every word the man said, or didn't say. Inside the room, Ward barely blinked as Agent Patrick Reed began the questioning. "We know everything," Reed said, voice low and deliberate. "The offshore accounts, the serpents, the recordings, the warehouse files." The island ward smiled softly. "You know what I allowed you to find." Reed's jaw tightened, but he didn't take the bait. "You trafficked children, Franklin. You used your foundation to launder money, move people, erase records. You manipulated the system so well it took a therapy dog and a 5-year-old to bring you down." Ward leaned back, his voice calm. "That's what fascinates me. You had databases, satellites, millions in government funding, and still, it was the silence of a little girl that cracked it." Reed's voice turned hard. Why children? Ward paused, as if the question required thought. Because the world forgets them, he said finally, voice soft, almost wistful. Runaways, foster kids, broken homes, they're invisible. And when they vanish, no one looks long enough, except you, because a dog growled. Outside the glass, Monroe's fingers curled into fists. Lisa whispered, "He's not afraid." "No," Monroe replied. "He doesn't think this ends here." Inside, Ward looked up at the camera, directly at it. "Do you really think it stops with me? There will always be another mask, another man with resources and patience and purpose." Reed stood. "Your purpose ends here." As the agents prepared to escort Ward out, the door opened. Monroe stepped in, silent. Rex followed at his heel. Ward's expression changed, not fear, not surprise, but something colder, calculating, as if trying to decode the creature at Monroe's side. "Well," Ward said, smiling slightly, "the silent witness." Rex didn't growl. He simply stared, unmoving. But there was tension in his body, like a bowstring drawn tight. His eyes burned with something that wasn't just instinct. It was memory. Ward leaned slightly forward, lips curling. "You remember me, don't you?" Monroe gave a short command, voice calm but sharp. "Back." Rex stayed still. "Funny," Ward murmured. "I underestimated him. Not a tool, not a pet, but something more." He turned to Monroe. "You should study him. The bond, the transfer of trauma. That's where the real future lies." "Shut up," Monroe said, voice quiet but hard. At that moment, the door opened again. Small footsteps padded in, hesitant but determined. Emily Carter. The courtroom team had warned against it. She'd already been through too much. But it was Emily who had asked to see the man behind the mask, to face him. She walked in slowly, her hand resting on Rex's back. Her hair was tucked behind her ears, her cheeks pale but calm. When she stopped, she didn't look at Ward. She looked at Rex, and Rex looked up at her, as if waiting. Ward gave a soft chuckle. "Brave little thing. You came to see the monster?" Emily finally looked at him. For a moment her expression faltered, the ghost of fear rippling behind her eyes. But she reached down, gripped Rex's fur tighter, and stepped forward. Rex shifted, not lunging but rising. His posture told the room everything. If Emily hadn't been there, he wouldn't have held back. Ward saw it too. "You've trained him well," Ward whispered. "Or maybe he trained you." Emily didn't speak. She didn't have to. She reached up, placed a hand gently on Rex's chest, and shook her head. Number. Not like this. Monroe saw it then. Not just bravery, but something more powerful. Control. A girl who had every reason to hate, to fear, to lash out. Choosing to stop the cycle. Not through violence, through presence, through healing. Ward was pulled to his feet, hands cuffed. The agents led him away, his last words echoing into the sterile hallway. "You can't stop the cycle." Monroe knelt beside Emily, his voice low. "You just did." And Rex. He leaned into her side, tail swaying slowly, breathing calm. The face behind the mask was finally revealed. And the shadows? For the first time, they seemed to retreat. It began with sunlight. For weeks, Seattle had been blanketed in gray, rain clouds too stubborn to lift. But the morning after Franklin Ward's arrest, light finally broke through the clouds, casting a warm hue over the city like a quiet blessing. It poured gently across hospital windows, safe houses, and the front porch of the Carter home, where life had once been paused in silence. Emily Carter sat cross-legged on the front steps, the sleeves of her sweatshirt tugged over her hands. Her eyes were focused on the lawn, where Rex, her silent shadow, rolled lazily on his back, paws in the air, tail sweeping the grass in contentment. She giggled softly. Not a whisper this time. A real, full laugh. Inside the house, Sarah Carter heard it and froze in place. Her hands trembled slightly as she set down the mug of tea. She turned to Monroe, who was sitting at the kitchen table across from her, eyes still guarded even after everything was done. She laughed, Sarah whispered, as if saying it too loud might make it vanish. That's the first time I've heard her laugh like that, and she couldn't finish the sentence. Monroe gave her a faint smile. She's not just healing, she's reclaiming. Sarah exhaled slowly, wiping the corner of her eye. I don't know how to thank you. You don't have to thank me, Monroe said. Thank him. He nodded toward the window. Outside, Emily had crawled closer to Rex. Her fingers combed gently through his thick fur, stopping now and then to press against the familiar scar along his flank. Her lips moved. A whisper, not for anyone but him. You found me when I couldn't call for help, she said softly. You were my voice. Rex blinked up at her, then rolled to his side, pressing his head into her lap. And there, on that small patch of grass, they stayed. No longer the girl who was broken and the dog who had been discarded. Just two souls that had saved each other. At the FBI field office, a new display was being installed. The hallway was quiet, reserved for agents and staff. But near the center, where the wall of honor stretched from one end to the other, a single framed photo had been placed beneath the inscription, "In honor of silent courage." The photo was of Rex, upright, alert, eyes fixed just off camera. It wasn't a posed shot. It had been taken during one of the searches, muddy, battered, and beautiful in its raw truth. Below it, a plaque read, REX, K9, Witness, Companion, Protector, Hero. Monroe stood a few paces back, arms crossed. Lisa Carter joined him, her expression soft. You know, she said, that dog did more than half the agents I've worked with. Monroe smirked faintly. He doesn't care about red tape, just instincts. Lisa tilted her head. He's staying with them, right, the Carters? Monroe nodded. There's no place else he belongs. He paused, then added, Emily sleeps through the night now. And she talks. Lisa smiled. Good. They stood in silence a while longer, the hum of the building continuing quietly around them. Outside, the headlines were everywhere. Billionaire behind bars, FBI breaks, child trafficking ring, and 1,000 variations of the same truth. The serpents had been gutted. The operation was shut down, but not erased. Do you think it's really over? Lisa asked. Monroe's jaw tightened slightly. Not completely. There's always someone watching, someone waiting. Lisa looked over. You scared? He shook his head. Number. Because now they know we're watching too. Later that afternoon, Monroe walked through a nearby park, his coat fluttering in the breeze, hands in his pockets. Rex trotted beside him, leash trailing loosely. Ahead, he spotted Emily again, running this time, playing tag with another little girl. Her laugh echoed off the trees. Monroe slowed. Rex stopped too, tail wagging as he caught sight of her. She turned, spotted them, and came sprinting. Rex! She squealed. Rex bounded forward, meeting her halfway. She wrapped her arms around his neck, burying her face into his fur. Then she looked up at Monroe. Agent Jack, she said, her voice clear, sure. Monroe raised an eyebrow. That's new. She giggled again. Mom says you like being mysterious. He chuckled. Only on Thursdays. Emily sat down, cross-legged in the grass, Rex curling beside her. She reached out, resting her small hand gently on his head. Her smile softened. He's not just a dog, she said, voice quieter now. He's my voice, my hero. Monroe looked at them both. Yeah, he murmured, mine too. Above them, the sun climbed higher, scattering gold across the treetops. There were still shadows in the world, still things that lurked in silence, but here, in this moment, light had returned. And Rex was watching. Always. I hope you enjoyed today's story. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more stories like this. Leave a like and comment below what you thought of the story. See you in the next video.